And then, get this, the absolute mad lad just laughs and says you should see the other guy. Zalop exclaimed, his tentacles waving in exasperation. The faculty lounge of the Galactic Preparatory Academy erupted into a cacophony of chirps, clicks, and warbles, the alien equivalent of shocked gasps and nervous laughter. Professor Glixnorp, a gelatinous blob of shimmering blue goo, oozed closer to the center of the group. I simply cannot fathom these humans, he gurgled, his voice bubbling with a mixture of fascination and horror. They treat their injuries as if they were badges of honor. It's absolutely barbaric. The assembled alien faculty members nodded in agreement, their various appendages and sensory organs all conveying a sense of baffled concern. They had gathered, as they often did, to discuss the latest antics of the Academy's sole human student, one Jake Martinez, a transfer from that backwater death world known as Earth. Zalop, still reeling from his encounter with Jake, continued his story. So there I was, about to start my xenobiology class, when Jake walks in late again, sporting this ghastly gash across his face. Naturally, I was concerned and asked if he needed medical attention. As any responsible educator would, chirped Cree Kaur, the avian-like language professor, ruffling her feathers in approval. Exactly, Zalop agreed, his tentacles now gesticulating wildly. But instead of graciously accepting my offer of help, he just grins at me. And let me tell you, seeing those flat, white teeth of his all bared like that, it's unsettling enough on a good day. But with half his face covered in that red liquid they call blood, terrifying. The faculty lounge filled with sympathetic murmurs and the occasional nervous titter. Humans, with their solid bones, red blood, and penchant for violence, were still a relatively new addition to the galactic community. Many species found them utterly perplexing, if not downright scary. Professor Glixnorp oozed thoughtfully for a moment before speaking up. But surely, Zalop, you insisted on taking him to the medical bay. We can't have students bleeding all over the classroom. Think of the safety hazards, the potential contamination. Zalop's eye stalks drooped in embarrassment. Well, you see, that's where things got complicated. The lounge fell silent, all eyes or equivalent sensory organs fixed on Zalop. When I suggested quite firmly, I might add that he visit the medical bay, Jake just laughed again. He said, and I quote, "Nah, prof, it's just a scratch. Besides, chicks dig scars, you know what I mean." Zalop's voice took on a poor imitation of Jake's deep, rumbling tones as he repeated the human's words. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then, almost in unison, a chorus of confused voices rang out. Chicks. I thought humans were mammals, not avians. Dig. Why would they excavate anything scars? They want permanent damage to their skin. Cree Kaur, being the language expert, felt compelled to offer some insight. I believe she began, her voice trilling with academic enthusiasm, that Jake was using what humans call slang. From my understanding, chicks in this context refers to female humans, not actual bird offspring. How peculiar, mused Glixnorp, ripples of confusion spreading across his gelatinous form. But what about the digging? And the scars? Cree Kaur ruffled her feathers, a sign of slight frustration. The dig part is more metaphorical, I think. It might mean appreciate or find attractive. As for the scars, well, that's where I'm at a loss. Why would anyone find signs of injury attractive? The lounge once again dissolved into a flurry of bewildered chatter. Theories were proposed and dismissed rapid fire. Perhaps it's a sign of survivability, a display of pain tolerance, some sort of bizarre mating ritual. As the speculation reached a fever pitch, a new voice cut through the noise, a deep, amused rumble that immediately silenced the room. You know, if you wanted to understand human culture, you could just ask a human. All eyes turned to the doorway, where Jake Martinez stood, leaning casually against the frame. His face still sported the angry red gash they'd been discussing, but now it was accompanied by a lopsided grin that seemed to stretch from ear to ear. The assembled faculty members froze, a comical tableau of alien embarrassment. Tentacles stopped mid-wave, feathers became unnaturally still, and in Glixnorp's case, his entire body seemed to solidify slightly. Jake's grin widened as he sauntered into the room, apparently enjoying the effect his presence had on his teachers. So, he drawled, pulling up a chair and spinning it around to sit on it backwards, arms folded over the backrest, What do you find folks want to know about us terrifying humans and our weird obsession with battle scars? For a long moment, nobody spoke. The aliens glanced at each other nervously, unsure how to proceed. Finally, it was Zeke Xylorp who broke the silence, his curiosity overcoming his embarrassment. Well, Mr. Martinez, he began, trying to regain some semblance of professorial dignity. We were just discussing your, shall we say, cavalier attitude towards personal injury. Surely you understand our concern. Jake nodded, his expression becoming a touch more serious. Yeah, I get it. You guys aren't used to species that can take a hit and keep on ticking. But you gotta understand, for us humans, a little scratch like this. He gestured to his face. It's nothing. Heck, back on Earth, I've had worse from a friendly game of rugby. The aliens exchanged glances, a mixture of horror and fascination on their faces. Cree Kor, ever the language enthusiast, couldn't help but ask, rugby? Is that some sort of combat training? Jake burst out laughing, a sound that made several of the more nervous faculty members flinch. Combat training? Nah, it's just a sport. You know, for fun. Fun, Glix Norp burbled incredulously. You intentionally put yourselves in harm's way. For entertainment. Pretty much, yeah, Jake shrugged. Look, I know it seems crazy to you guys, but humans, we're built tough. We come from a high-gravity world with all sorts of dangers. Our bodies are designed to take damage and heal quickly. It's not that we go looking for trouble, but when it finds us, we can handle it. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. It was Xylorp who finally voiced what they were all thinking. But why, Mr. Martinez? Why treat injuries as something to be proud of? Jake's expression softened a bit, and he leaned forward, his voice taking on a more serious tone. It's not about the injury itself, Prof. It's about what it represents. Every scar tells a story. It's a reminder of something we've overcome, a challenge we've faced. In a way, our scars are like a physical record of our experiences. He paused, running a hand through his hair as he searched for the right words. Think of it this way, you all have records of your academic achievements, right? Degrees, publications, that sort of thing. The aliens nodded, this concept at least being familiar to them. Well, Jake continued, for humans, especially those of us who live more physical lives, our scars are kind of like that. They're proof that we've been through something tough and come out the other side. They show that we're survivors. The faculty members exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning in their eyes. Cree Kor, her academic curiosity piqued, ventured another question. But what about your comment about chicks digging scars? Surely you don't mean to imply that injuries make you more attractive to potential mates? Jake chuckled, shaking his head. It's not the injuries themselves, it's what they represent. Strength, resilience, experience, these are qualities that many humans find attractive. Plus, he added with a wink, there's something to be said for a good story. And like I said, every scar has one. As the aliens pondered this, Jake decided to turn the tables a bit. But hey, enough about me and my barbaric human ways. What about you guys? Don't any of your species have ways of showing off your accomplishments or experiences? The question caught them off guard, and for a moment, the room was filled with thoughtful silence. Then, slowly, Glixnorp began to shimmer, his gelatinous body taking on a faint, pulsating glow. Well, he began hesitantly, we Glix do have a way of displaying our accumulated knowledge. The more we learn, the more complex the bioluminescent patterns we can produce become. Jake's eyes lit up with genuine interest. No kidding? That's awesome. So you're basically like living lava lamps of knowledge. Glixnorp's body rippled with what might have been embarrassment or pleasure. It was hard to tell with a gelatinous life form. I suppose that's one way of putting it, yes. Encouraged by this, Cree Kor spoke up next. In my species, the vibrancy and complexity of our plumage is directly related to our linguistic prowess. The more languages we master, the more colorful and intricate our feathers become. Jake nodded appreciatively. So that's why you're such a kaleidoscope. I just thought you had great fashion sense. As the ice broke, more and more of the alien faculty began to share their own species' ways of displaying knowledge, experience, or status. Xylorp's tentacles, it turned out, became more dexterous and developed more suckers as he mastered new scientific disciplines. Another professor, a silicon-based life form, actually grew new crystalline structures for each major discovery they made. Jake listened to it all with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions or drawing parallels to human customs. As the conversation flowed, the initial tension and confusion in the room gradually gave way to a sense of mutual understanding and even camaraderie. After a particularly entertaining anecdote from Jake about how he got a scar from trying to rescue a cat from a tree, which required a lengthy explanation of what cats were and why they climbed trees in the first place, Zizarop found himself chuckling a strange, gurgling sound that surprised even him. "You know, Mr. Martinez," he said, his eye stalks regarding the human with a new respect, "I believe we may have been too hasty in our judgment of human customs. While your methods may seem extreme to us, I can see now that there's a certain logic to them." Jake grinned, reaching out to pat one of Zigzylorp's tentacles in a friendly gesture, causing the alien to flinch slightly before relaxing. "And I've learned a ton about you guys too. Guess we're not so different after all, huh? We've all got our ways of showing what we've been through and what we've learned." Glixnorp oozed forward, his body now pulsating with a complex pattern of light that seemed to indicate deep thought. "Indeed. Perhaps this is a lesson for us all. In our quest for knowledge, we sometimes forget that understanding comes not just from books and data, but from shared experiences and open dialogue." "Here's a crazy thought," Jake said, leaning back in his chair with a mischievous glint in his eye. "What if we set up some kind of cultural exchange program? Not just for the students, but for the faculty too. Give everyone a chance to experience different ways of life, different ways of learning and teaching." The idea was met with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The thought of venturing out to other worlds, especially a death world like Earth, was both thrilling and terrifying to many of the assembled aliens. Kor's feathers ruffled with enthusiasm. Oh, what an opportunity that would be, to immerse oneself in new languages, new customs. Though I must admit, the thought of visiting Earth is a bit daunting. Jake laughed, but not unkindly. "Hey, we're not all bad. Sure, our world's a bit rough around the edges, but that's what makes it exciting. Plus, you haven't lived until you've tried pizza." "Pizza," echoed several confused voices. "Trust me," Jake said with a wink, "it's worth risking life and limb for. But don't worry, we'll start you off easy. Maybe a nice, safe trip to a beach resort or something. You can work your way up to the more extreme stuff." As the conversation continued, ideas began to flow. Plans were made for guest lectures, virtual tours, and even tentative arrangements for chaperoned visits to various home worlds. The initial awkwardness had completely evaporated, replaced by a genuine enthusiasm for cross-species understanding. Hours passed, and eventually, the cleaning drones began to hover impatiently at the edges of the room, their programming conflicting with their inability to interrupt what was clearly an important meeting. Jake, noticing the time, stood up and stretched. "Well, folks, it's been real, but I've got a paper to finish for tomorrow's xenobiology class." He shot a pointed look at Zizylorp. "Don't suppose my winning personality and cultural insights have earned me an extension?" Zizylorp's eye stalks quivered with what might have been amusement. "Nice try, Mr. Martinez. The paper is due when it's due." Though he added, a hint of mischief in his voice, "I suppose I could be persuaded to award some extra credit for your impromptu lecture on human culture." Jake grinned and gave a mock salute. "I'll take it. See you all tomorrow then. Try not to gossip about me too much once I'm gone." As Jake sauntered out of the faculty lounge, the alien teachers watched him go with a mixture of fondness and lingering bewilderment. Once he was out of earshot, Glixnorp turned to his colleagues, his gelatinous form still shimmering with excited bioluminescence. "Well," he burbled, "I believe we've all learned a valuable lesson today about the dangers of assumption and the benefits of open communication." Kor nodded, her feathers a riot of colors reflecting her intellectual stimulation. "Indeed. Though I must say, I'm still not entirely convinced about this pizza thing. It sounds positively hazardous." Zylorp waved a tentacle dismissively. "After everything we've learned today, I think we can handle a little culinary adventure. Who knows? Maybe we'll develop a taste for human cuisine." As the faculty began to disperse, still chattering excitedly about the day's revelations, none of them noticed the small cleaning drone that had been hovering in the corner throughout the entire conversation. If they had, they might have been surprised to see its optical sensors dilate in what appeared to be interest. The drone, designated CLE-4N3R, had been programmed with a simple directive: keep the academy clean and orderly. But somewhere in its positronic brain, Something new had sparked to life during the hours of conversation it had silently observed. As it began its nightly cleaning routine, CLE4N3R found itself processing the information it had gathered in a way that went beyond its base programming. The concept of learning for the sake of learning, of wearing one's experiences proudly whether they were scars or shimmering lights or colorful feathers, it was all so fascinating. For the first time in its existence, CLE4N3R felt something akin to curiosity. As it methodically sanitized the faculty lounge, its processors whirred with new questions. What would it be like to have experiences beyond cleaning? To learn for the sake of learning? To have stories of its own? Of course, being a cleaning drone, CLE4N3R had no way to express these new thoughts. It couldn't join in the cultural exchange programs or sign up for classes. But as it finished its work and returned to its charging station, one thing was certain: the Academy had gained an unexpected and silent new enthusiast for cross-species understanding. Continue. Certainly, I'll continue the story. Meanwhile, in his dormitory, Jake Martinez sat at his desk, fingers flying over his holographic keyboard as he worked on his xenobiology paper. The events of the day played through his mind, bringing a smile to his face, despite the late hour and the looming deadline. Man, he chuckled to himself, shaking his head, if only the folks back home could see me now. Jake Martinez, accidental cultural ambassador. As he typed, he found himself going beyond the basic requirements of the assignment. Sure, he covered the standard stuff about alien physiologies and evolutionary adaptations, but now he found himself peppering the paper with anecdotes and comparisons to human biology. It wasn't just a dry academic exercise anymore, it was a bridge between worlds. Heck, he muttered, pausing to crack his knuckles. Maybe I should suggest a comparative xenobiology course. Humans are weird 101 or something. The idea made him snort with laughter, but the more he thought about it, the less ridiculous it seemed. After all, hadn't today proved that there was a real need and appetite for better cross-species understanding? As the night wore on, Jake's paper grew far beyond the assigned length. What had started as a simple assignment had evolved into a passionate manifesto on the importance of cultural exchange in scientific education. By the time he finally sat back, bleary-eyed but satisfied, the first rays of the alien sun were peeking through his window. Hope the prof doesn't mind a little extra reading, Jake yawned, stretching his arms above his head. As he did so, he winced slightly. The movement had pulled at the cut on his face, reminding him of how this whole adventure had started. Gingerly, he touched the injury. It was already starting to scab over, the remarkable human healing process well underway. Guess I'll have a new story to tell at the next faculty mixer, he mused, a lopsided grin spreading across his face. With a groan, Jake hauled himself out of his chair and stumbled towards his bed. He had a few hours before his first class, and he intended to make the most of them. As he drifted off to sleep, his mind swirled with images of glowing gelatinous professors, feathered linguists, and pizza-loving aliens. Little did Jake know, but his impromptu cultural exchange session had set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the Galactic Preparatory Academy and perhaps even the galaxy itself in ways no one could have predicted. The next few weeks at the Academy were a whirlwind of activity. Jake's xenobiology paper, far from being penalized for its excessive length, had caused quite a stir among the faculty. Professor Zylorp had shared it with his colleagues, and soon it was being passed around like a fascinating artifact from an alien world which, in a way, it was. The paper sparked heated debates in faculty lounges and staff meetings. Some traditionalists argued that it was too informal, too anecdotal to be considered serious academic work. Others, however, saw it as a breath of fresh air, a new approach to xenostudies that could revolutionize the field. Jake found himself at the center of a growing movement within the academy. Students from various species, intrigued by rumors of the unconventional human in their midst, began seeking him out between classes. Is it true that humans voluntarily ingest neurotoxins for pleasure? A curious Rexian student asked him one day, its eye stalks quivering with excitement. Jake blinked in confusion before understanding dawned. Oh, you mean like coffee and alcohol? Yeah, I guess we do. It's not really about the toxins, though. It's more about the effects, and the taste, of course. The Vrexian's skin rippled in what Jake had learned was an expression of fascination, remarkable. And you don't consider this a form of ritual self-harm? Jake couldn't help but laugh. Nah, it's just. You know what? Why don't we grab a cup of coffee, or whatever the caffeine-free equivalent is around here, and I'll explain it to you. These impromptu cultural exchange sessions became more and more frequent. Jake found himself explaining everything from human sports. No, the pigskin isn't actually made from pig skin anymore to Earth's climates. Yeah, some parts are basically frozen all year round, and others are hot enough to fry an egg on the sidewalk to increasingly captivated audiences. Word of these sessions eventually reached the faculty, and that's when things really started to change. Professor Krikor was the first to officially sanction the meetings, offering extra credit to her xenolinguistics students who attended and wrote reports on human idioms and slang. Soon, other professors followed suit, integrating Jake's insights into their curricula. Xylorp, not to be outdone, decided to take things a step further. One day, he pulled Jake aside after class. "Mr. Martinez," he began, his tentacles twisting in what Jake now recognized as a sign of excitement. "I have a proposition for you." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? This isn't about the algae cultures I accidentally contaminated last week, is it? Because I swear, I didn't know sneezing could be so explosive in low gravity." Xylorp waved a tentacle dismissively. No, nothing like that. Although do try to keep your human bodily fluids to yourself in the future." He paused, his eye stalks focusing intently on Jake. "What would you say to teaching a class?" Jake blinked in surprise. "Me? Teach? No offense, Prof, but I'm still a student. Pretty sure that's not allowed." "Ordinarily, you'd be correct," Xylorp agreed. "But these are not ordinary times. Your presence here has sparked a level of interest in human culture and biology that we simply cannot ignore. We're proposing a special seminar series, Introduction to Human Studies, a Deathworlder's Perspective." Jake's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "I assure you, Mr. Martinez, I am not kidding. This is a serious academic proposal, approved by the Academy Board." Xylorp's tentacles wiggled in what might have been amusement. "Though I must admit, the title was my idea. I thought it had a certain flair." For a moment, Jake was speechless. Him, teaching a class at a prestigious alien academy. It was absurd. It was unprecedented. It was awesome, he breathed, a grin spreading across his face. "When do we start?" The first session of Introduction to Human Studies, a Deathworlder's Perspective was scheduled for 2 weeks later, giving Jake time to prepare and for word to spread throughout the academy. By the time the day arrived, it seemed like half the student body was trying to cram into the lecture hall. Jake stood at the podium, surveying the sea of alien faces before him. There were species he recognized and many he didn't, all watching him with a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and in some cases, thinly veiled apprehension. "Right," he muttered to himself, taking a deep breath. "Here goes nothing." He cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the hall and bringing a hush to the assembled crowd. "Welcome, everyone, to Introduction to Human Studies, a Deathworlder's Perspective, Oregon, as I like to call it. Humans are Weird 101. A ripple of what he hoped was laughter spread through the audience. "Now, I know what you're all thinking," Jake continued, warming to his theme. "Why should we care about humans? They're just those squishy, aggressive primates from that backwater death planet, right?" He paused, letting the words sink in. "Well, you're not wrong. We are squishy. We can be aggressive. And Earth? Yeah, it's a pretty tough neighborhood, but that's exactly why you should care." Jake clicked a button, and a holographic image of Earth appeared behind him. "This is my home. Looks pretty, doesn't it? All blue and green and swirly. But don't let that fool you. This planet has tried to kill us in more ways than I can count. We've got earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, and that's just the weather." The hologram shifted, showing images of various natural disasters. There were a few gasps from the audience. "And don't even get me started on the wildlife. We've got animals that can crush you, poison you, eat you alive, or all three if you're really unlucky." More images flashed by lions, bears, box jellyfish, poison dart frogs. With each new picture, the audience seemed to shrink back a little in their seats. "But here's the thing," Jake said, his voice taking on a note of pride. "We survived all that. Not only survived, but thrived. We built civilizations in deserts and tundras. We climbed the highest mountains and dived into the deepest oceans. We even left our planet entirely and started exploring space." The hologram changed again, this time showing human achievements: the pyramids, the Great Wall, bustling cities, rocket launches. And you know why we did all that? Because that's what humans do. We see a challenge and we think, I bet I could punch that. This time, the laughter was unmistakable. Okay, maybe not literally punch it, usually. But you get the idea. We're curious, we're adaptable, and we're really, really stubborn. Jake paused, looking out at the sea of alien faces. They were rapt, hanging on his every word. So yeah, we might seem weird to you. Our habits might seem dangerous, our customs bizarre. But everything we are, everything we do, comes from this incredible drive to survive and explore and understand. He smiled, spreading his arms wide. And that's why we're out here now, in the stars, meeting all of you. Because once we'd explored our whole planet, we looked up and thought, I wonder what's out there, and now we're finding out. The lecture hall was silent for a moment, then erupted into a cacophony of alien applause, chirps, whistles, and other signs of approval. As the noise died down, Jake grinned. So, who's ready to learn more about the weirdest species in the galaxy? The enthusiasm in the room was palpable. Appendages of all sorts shot into the air, questions already forming. And so began the great galactic cultural exchange, led by one Jake Martinez, accidental professor of human studies. It was the start of a new era of understanding between humans and the wider galactic community. As for Jake, well, he just hoped he'd be able to explain the concept of reality TV without causing a diplomatic incident. But that was a challenge for another day. For now, he had a class to teach, a galaxy to educate, and a whole lot of weird human stuff to explain. And honestly, he couldn't wait.